In this documentary, I will be discussing the genre of crime and what's changed it in the last 50 years. What do you think? Would you recognise a crime that your parents watched? Are they the same? How would you describe a crime? Violence? Weapons? Bad guys? Good guys? What? Well, the main codes and conventions of a crime today: the illegal consumption of narcotics and alcohol, the use of weapons, usually guns or knives, police attempting to arrest the main protagonist. See, this is a key point of many crimes, and is the fact of the bad guy getting away, which lengthens the story and allows the film/book to carry on. This is to add depth to the narrative, as well as leading to the main protagonist getting cocky, which leads to his final capture. Other codes and conventions include question of morality, debates about innocence and guilt, audience recognition of ordinary people in the environment, and many more. Therefore, this should make a crime very easy to spot. However, many people confuse the true codes and conventions of a strict crime. This is one of the reasons that I believe that it's not going to be long before true crimes are no longer created. Many people tend to think that there is a usual romantic or comedic element. This is due to films like James Bond or the Fast and Furious franchise. I believe that these films present romantic interest for the main characters and therefore leads to the misconception of what a true crime entails. Despite this, many people disagree with this view and perceive true crimes to still be in circulation. I phoned up many companies, including authors and small film production companies, and they all believed that the genre of crime is still intact and hasn't been altered by romance or comedy. I personally believe that few true crimes are still being made and that romantic and comedic elements have become custom in many crime films. There is always a love interest, a damsel in distress, or a snide comment here and there to make the audience laugh. I feel this is due to the audiences constantly wanting more to entertain them. The evolution of technology has not helped this due to new faster tech coming out. People want more entertaining films to watch whilst on these gadgets. This demand for more has led to blurred lines between genres. It has caused subgenres and hybrid genres to be created. The fact that many subgenres of crime have evolved, it has created a whole new market for crime fans. They get bored of old-style crimes due to the romance and comedy not being there to entertain them. I believe that this has hindered the crime film industry and greatly due to its market dropping. Here you'll see I have interviewed 3 people to find out their opinion on whether comedy and romance have infiltrated the crime genre and whether other factors have infiltrated it as well. It starts off with the regular college teacher, goes to a director and writer of horror films, and then to someone who used to work in the police headquarters right round the corner from Chelmsford Prison. Listen to their opinions and see what they think on the matter. Would you say that romance and comedy play more of a role in films than they did 50 years ago?
I think the core ideas of romance and comedy have always been there right since the dawn of cinema. I think that they're so central to the human experience. I think that they'll be used as cornerstones to hang stories on. I think they have been for thousands of years, since before there was ever, before film existed, and I think they will continue to be so when we're telling stories in, I don't know how we'll be doing in 1,000 years' time, but whatever we're doing then, romance and comedy will still be there. And so I think that they may go through periods where they become less obvious. I think that the cinema goes through phases where people seem to feel it's not cool to be openly sentimental. I think that you do get these waves where cinema becomes very self-aware, and then it's like, oh no, I'm not going to be openly romantic about stuff because that's embarrassing. And then somebody comes along with something that is openly romantic and optimistic, and then everyone goes, oh, actually, you can sell tickets that way, and then they'll do that, and the cycle will continue. But comedy and romance will never go away. They're too fundamental to our experience as human beings.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Schaefer, and I am the director of this production, Crime in the Madhouse. It is a script from 1925 from the theater of the Grand Guignol. And the Grand Guignol was a theater in Paris, France, from 1897 to 1963 that specialized in naturalistic horror.
Interested in two things always. One was science and the stories of the scientists and scientific experimentation. I liked very much to work in a shop down in the basement and try to invent things and build gadgets. And at the same time, I was interested in stories. And I had an older brother who was very interested in literature, and so I had an early exposure to literature. And so I landed a job with Roger Corman to do originally the job was to take a Russian science fiction picture that he had bought, and he wanted me to write the English dialogue for it. Of course, I didn't speak any Russian, and then I realized he didn't care whether I could understand what they were really saying, and I just wanted me to make up dialogue, and he wanted, the movie really was a very idealistic science fiction picture, you know, and he wanted to add some monsters and kind of have the story be related to that. So I got that job, and I worked very hard on that, and ultimately I became Roger's assistant. Godfather was a very unappreciated movie when we were making it. They were very unhappy with it. They didn't like the casting. They didn't like the way we were shooting it. I was always really on the verge of getting fired, so it was an extremely nightmarish experience. You know, I had two little kids, and the third one was born during that. I lived in a little apartment, and I was basically frightened that I didn't like it, and I was, you know, they as much as said it. So when it was all over, I wasn't at all confident that it was going to be successful. I'd ever get another job. Certainly, it was a wonderful night when we won all those Oscars for Godfather 2, because that wasn't, at first that picture came out and people really didn't like it too much. I mean, that's one of the reasons George Lucas never directed again. No one knows this, but when he made Star Wars over there in England, George is sort of a little skinny version of me, you know, and he's not, doesn't have the most physical kind of stamina, and he was so ridiculed and sort of, you know, that kind of jock-like attitude that Cruise can have, putting him down for what he was doing and stuff. He was so unhappy making Star Wars that he just thought he'd never do it again. Most Italians who came to this country are, you know, very patriotic, and what that meant was just that there was this exciting possibility that if you worked real hard and you loved something, that you could become successful.
So, is there any crimes in the last 50 years that you think have influenced film or have been influenced by a film?
I guess it just comes down to the level of the crime, but I think absolutely. I think any time in history you get a major incident, it's going to help trigger a movie. If you look at recently, there's a film called Devil's Knot that was influenced by the West Memphis Three. Things like the Brixton riots about a couple of years ago ultimately influenced kind of those kind of movies. Even though it's not a direct crime, I think something like 9/11 / terrorism activities are going to influence future action business.
Within crime films today, do you think comedy and romance have more of a role than they did like 50 years ago?
I think so, yeah. I think crime used to be just traditionally a crime movie, and now they're trying to add like kind of black humour in there, and you know, there's always a kind of a love interest that is the whole sole purpose of people not wanting to do crime anymore.
Yeah. Would you say that any other factors have influenced the genre of crime, or would it just be them?
Technology, I think, massively. You know, they can't just do a simple heist movie or something like that. It has to be focused around IT-based stuff.
I think that every generation gets its iconic images of crime from mugshots. I think that mugshots in tabloids and whatever, where you see them over and over again, be that sort of images of murderers like Myra Hindley or whoever, or fallen celebrities as well. You get that mugshot, that becomes an icon, that becomes an iconic thing. And I think alongside that kind of imagery is the imagery that we get from movies. So if you talk about crime in the 90s, somewhere nagging around in the back of people's heads will be Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction or whatever. That kind of iconography of the cinema, crossed with what the media feeds us from real life, becomes people's perception.
Are there any crimes in the last 50 years that you think have influenced a film or were influenced by a film?
Yes, I think there have been now in the last few years. The fact that crimes that have taken place have been glamorised for the film industry, because 50 odd years ago they would have been more of a documentary form and very factual, and now to get bottoms on chairs in cinemas, the film companies are having to portray the crime as something glamorous in order to get people to buy the tickets to go and see it. So if they've got to have the romance in there and the gratuitous sex, as they usually have nowadays, then that's what it's got to be, and that's what the companies present.
Would you say that any other factors have influenced crime films, so social events or historical events at all?
I think you can always base most of the sort of crime films that you see on the television have got a historical base in a crime somewhere that's taken place, not necessarily in the last 50 years, it could be the last 500 years. But I do believe that they do influence what you see on the screen, on the telly or at the cinema.
Cybercrime is becoming everything in crime. Again, because people have connected their entire lives to the internet, that's where those who want to steal money or hurt kids or defraud go. So it's an epidemic for reasons that make sense. I mean, I think of it as kind of an evil layer cake. At the top, you have nation-state actors who are trying to break into our systems, terrorists, organized cyber syndicates, very sophisticated, harvesting people's personal computers, down to hacktivists, down to criminals and pedophiles.
Are there any crimes in the last 50 years that you think have influenced a film or been influenced by a film?
That's a very interesting question. I think that the kind of stock answer for anybody who's involved in horror is to quote the line from Scream of movies don't make psychos, movies just make psychos more creative, where I think that culture influences crime, and I think you'd have to be fairly naive to think that it doesn't at all. So with that in mind, I think it's kind of inevitable that whilst committing crime, people might be influenced in terms of what they wear, in terms of what they say.
By going on the IMDb website and searching crime feature films, you'll see that the animated film Zootopia is currently first in the ratings. Would you really class a child's animation film as a crime? I personally believe that this is one of the only pieces of evidence needed to show how true crime films have been lost in translation, and the meaning of them is used loosely. The fact that a kids' animation film has made it to even Google's list of 2016's top crime films is a shame in my eyes. A kids' film? An animation? Is it really a crime? I don't think so. If some may class it as a crime film, why are we allowing children to watch it? If it is truly a crime film, why has it got animated talking animals? Well, we now classing